Virginia is being called for Joe Biden, according to the Associated Press, and then Vermont, not really a big surprise here, going for Bernie Sanders, his home state. He won all of the delegates there last time around, and it seems he will likely do that again based on the polling we've seen so far. But Virginia is perhaps the most telling as to what we might expect this evening in terms of the southern states and whether Biden can have this sort of rebound that he seemed to expect and hope for after South Carolina.
What would happen in the South? Would the firewall that Joe Biden pushed for in South Carolina translate to other southern states? And so far, that appears to be the case. The Associated Press calling Virginia, North Carolina, and also Alabama for the former vice president. Mike Bloomberg spent big in this state. We are talking $7.3 million spent on ad buys. We're talking television, digital, etc. And right now, 9.4%. Why is that an important figure, Tim? Because 15% is the amount you need statewide to start getting statewide delegates. So if he can't get to a viable point in this state, why is he spending all this money? Is it a worthwhile investment if he's not getting anything in a state where he was kind of considered up until recently as potentially a player? Again, it's probably a lot of those people that were deciding at the last minute. As you saw Klobuchar, you saw Pete Buttigieg pushing for them to support Biden. In a lot of these states, you had Pete Buttigieg at maybe the 10% mark, for example, which is where it becomes a wild card. Not all those votes are going to Biden, obviously, but you have to imagine some of them are, especially in Virginia, for example, where Biden currently has about a 30% lead, and that's with most, if not all, of the precincts reporting, which is pretty extraordinary considering we had seen Bloomberg, Sanders, and Biden all kind of in contention in the 20 mark. Elizabeth Warren, this is our home state, 19%, 20% basically. Now, she is obviously above that level where she could get some statewide delegates out of this, but not a good showing for her. And then the question becomes, what happens for her next? Well, and Bernie Sanders also picking up some states, including California, a rich state of 400 plus delegates, a big impact here. But the question is, how many of those delegates will he actually get? We won't know California's end result probably for several days just because of how they have to process some of those mail-in ballots in that state. But at the very least, Sanders is going to win there. That was somewhat expected. The question is, how many of those states, or how many of those delegates at the end of the day, does he get? Wins in Virginia, Alabama, and so forth, including Texas, which was one of the races to watch last night. The second biggest delegate count right there, more than 200. But a lot of this you can only imagine accounts to that South Carolina victory, that building off of that firewall. Biden then sweeping the South. A lot of these voters also waiting until the last minute to make up their minds. Some surprises throughout the evening, though, too. Massachusetts, home territory for Senator Elizabeth Warren, going to Biden. Maine, a very tight matchup between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, called this afternoon by the Associated Press for the Biden camp. The big question that remains, though, is California. What exactly is going to happen here with the end result? Obviously, this was where Sanders was really hoping to his firewall, if you will, on Super Tuesday day, because there are 400 delegates up for grabs here. Could he hold on to all the statewide delegates? The short answer is, based on the polling we've seen so far, they're still collecting this data. They're still bringing in those results. There were a lot of mail-in ballots as well. But so far, Biden has enough that he's above that viability point, that he's going to be able to chip away at the number of delegates that Bernie Sanders was hoping to secure there. So that really makes this whole gambit here a bit different than perhaps what we expected going into this election day. At the end of the day, though, maybe the biggest takeaway in all of this, well, maybe two. One, that this is now a two-man race, effectively. You have Bernie Sanders versus Joe Biden. Number two, Bloomberg, his effort to try to go all in on Super Tuesday, invest all those millions of dollars across these states. If you take a look, he won none of the states in the continental U.S. He only got American Samoa. He got a delegate, a lead there. So at the end of the day, that did not pay off to him.
Don't underestimate American Samoa, Kevin.